Welcome back to Sky Sports News. Let's get to F1 now. Carlos Sainz held off all three British drivers to end Red Bull's winning streak and claim victory at the Singapore Grand Prix. Let's get some reaction now alongside host of the P1 podcast, Matt Gallagher. Matt, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon after what was a breathless weekend of Formula One action. What a result it was in the end for Carlos Sainz. What's the big picture here then, Matt? Is this one or two off, as might be more accurate, or is this the end of the Red Bull dominance?
Well, thanks for having me on. I think it's probably just a blip, to be honest with you. Red Bull have been obviously absolutely unstoppable this year. The first time we've seen anyone other than Red Bull win was at the Singapore Grand Prix this weekend. It seemed a bit of a mystery, really, as to why Red Bull were as slow as they were. And it was quite a strange thing for fans to be able to enjoy a race knowing that Red Bull didn't really have a chance at any point during it. But I fully believe that we go to Suzuka this weekend, they'll be right back at the top.
And does that mean then, I can kind of infer from that you're thinking that Max Verstappen's dominance might continue from the next race onwards?
Well, it's my job to try and keep hyping up Formula One. But yeah, it's likely that Red Bull haven't lost anything. There's been a technical directive that came in for this weekend around flexi floors, flexi wings, and Red Bull themselves have said that they weren't actively, they didn't have to change anything on their car. So they are basically saying that's got nothing to do with it, which makes me think it might just be an outlier, Singapore. It's happened in the past as well. Mercedes has turned up to Singapore through their dominance over the years and then struggled there as well. So it's just a strange old track, but it's very, very unique. Yeah,
regardless of the struggles, it was a big win for Ferrari, and for most of the race they looked in quite good control. Has Frederic Vasseur already shown that he can lead this team?
Certainly, yeah, and it's going to take a little bit longer to really feel the impact of Fred and exactly how he's going to change the team. What is absolutely clear is that Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc are both top talents. And Carlos, especially since Zandvoort, has really started to come into his own. And as much as over the last sort of year and a half, we've thought Charles Leclerc is leading this team, Carlos is starting to make people ask a few questions, and to deliver a victory as well as he did with a car that wasn't clearly dominant this weekend. It was so impressive, and I'd love to be a fly on the wall when there's contract negotiations happening.
Yeah, wouldn't we all? Now, let's move on to George Russell, because it was going so well until the bitter end of the race after a great weekend for him. How do you think he'll come away from this? Will he be able to reflect on the positives, or do you think it's just overall a real lesson for him to learn?
Oh, I mean, it was heartbreaking to see his post-race interview and the fact he was quite literally crying. You know, it meant so much to him because he knew that there was a race victory on the plate. And as well, with the Red Bull dominance, these drivers know that these opportunities don't come round very often. Red Bull have been a well-oiled machine, but this weekend was the opportunity for a driver to take the victory. And George was in the pound seats with 5 laps to go. He's right on the back of Lando. And had he got through on, I think it was lap 58, I think we would have been saying George Russell's won the race. But instead, Lando clipping the wall there, as we've just seen, with his right rear. But he was OK. George following suit, but hitting the wall just slightly harder. And that was the end of his race after what was such a promising weekend from him. He looked like he had the measure over Lewis Hamilton for most of the weekend, up until that final medium stint in the race, where Lewis came alive. And then the questions were, look, if Lewis had been that lead Mercedes driver, I think we could have seen him come out on top.
Yeah, interesting dynamic that, isn't it? Now, well, we saw Lando Norris there clipping the same corner, but it turned out to be a good race for him, winning his 3rd podium of the season. Questions now turn to if McLaren are doing enough to convince him to stay.
Well, these were big questions at the start of the year, because McLaren came out very, very slow, to say the least. They did it again in 22 as well at the beginning of the season, but they've picked it up so incredibly well. And Lando wants to be in a team where he can lead from the front and not have to maybe settle into a Red Bull. Then he'll have to beat Max Verstappen in his own yard. Instead, he has McLaren that's shaped around him. And to be delivering so many podiums now, I'm sure the confidence is really there with Lando. He's just so close to his first ever victory. And it has to be on the horizon soon for sure, because he's been delivering, especially when that McLaren is able to. He's been right there at the front. Silverstone was such a shock for us all when McLaren brought all those upgrades. But you just know if you give him a good car, Lando will deliver. And we're all just waiting for that first victory.
Yeah, exciting as always. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much.